this is Paul Slatkis, Good News Broadcast, Pause the World for Peace. And we are very, very lucky because we're going to talk to Amy Pollack. And Amy, she is fantastic. She's a mom, a grandma, and she has this book series. It's called, well, it's a coming of age book series. We're a retired teacher. We're going to learn about that. Grandparent helps middle graders navigate the challenges of growing up. And um, hi, Amy, how are you?
Hi, Paul. How are you? Good.
Good. Something about a thing, a couple words that have been written down here for me is one is jelly bean and another word was toilet. And so I get right to the point here.
Oh
Um,
boy.
well, only because even when the president of the borough of Manhattan talked, he talked the most about setting up places where people could go to the bathroom in New York. So, and that would cause the biggest interest. But you utilize that in some fashion. You'll tell us somebody fell in the toilet. What happened?
What happened was Jelly Bean in my Adventures of Jelly Bean and Further Adventures of Jelly Bean, and my book 3 is going to come out soon in a few months. Takes them a while, my publisher. She begins her day, and she is the youngest of 4, and she has 3 older brothers, and they have been known to leave the toilet seat up. So she's rushing, 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 not realizing that. And as she's getting ready for school to go out to her carpool, she falls in the toilet, has to change all her clothes, is late for school. And that's the beginning of my book. And that's the start to her no good, terrible, very bad day. And to quote from Alexander in that book, my kids liked it when they were little.
Well, I think that's a heck of an opening, and Louis Mayer from Metro Golden Mayer would say the same. You start off with a tornado and you end up with a hurricane. So this is a similar scenario. Uh,
Mhm.
so, so you know, I praise you for being a teacher. Obviously, I sense that you were a wonderful teacher, and you're still
Mhm.
teaching now, utilizing that career. Do you feel you are doing that with your books?
Oh, still teaching. Oh, that's interesting. I do go around to the schools and give presentations, and I find, the child's the father of the man. I learn so much from the students. They never cease to amaze me. I always loved 99.99999% of all the students in all my classes, and I taught a lot of grades and a lot of subjects, ending up with um, teaching college, which I love the best, teaching writing there. But am I still teaching through my books? I guess you could say so, because I do, as I said, give a lot of these presentations,
Well,
go to book shows and so forth. Yeah.
that seems to me what the book is all about. It's another opportunity for people to learn from you if you don't show up in their homes, in their classrooms. And, and we need help. And I'm a grandpa.
Mhm.
We need to negotiate the times and life and time. So, I mean, there's some really, so what does coming of age mean? I mean, what is that? Someone,
Oh,
what does it mean?
so what it is, and I was always a big reader, and like in books like Anne of Green Gables, and oh, what else did I used to read to my daughter? All that kind of thing. Well, first of all, people do love a series, and my book in I got these excellent reviews from which kind of surprised me in a good way, from US Review and from Kirkus. And in some places they referenced my jelly bean, my main character, who is quote unquote coming of age, as a role model. And you know what happens? She learns to, like we all do, make decisions, try to make the best decisions for herself. Again, like most people in this world, by trial and error. Does she always listen to her parents? Well, like any 9-year-old, rather, 4th grader, that's how she starts out. She tells them when she disagrees with them, like my children always did, and sometimes it was hard to corral them. And so she learns, and she learns to accept change, which I think is a big battle for most of us. And in broad terms, that's a lot of what my books are about. Her parents, for example, don't really like the little girl she's chosen. to be her best friend, who's the most loyal, wonderful little girl, because, and she kind of figures this out, Jelly Bean, the little girl is from the wrong side of the tracks and has a difficult household. And these are all issues that occur. Parents don't like your good friends or your boyfriends and that kind of thing. And how she negotiates this. And of course, the grandmother in the book is, as
Perfect.
it may, saves the day in many cases.
So let's use that as an example for us to learn, okay?
Mhm.
Because it's a big book and there's a lot to learn in it. And a big series and big potential for helping for from now and forever. So what does, because that is an issue, no doubt about it. And so what are some thoughts that, you've experienced? You have a big family, big grand family, and what are some thoughts that parents could do?
Oh, huh. With all the conflicts that occur,
It's a big question.
well,
It's not a-
okay, it's not an easy one. When I taught high school and I spoke to a lot of parents about this, and I spoke to their kids about this, having gone through a lot myself, is conflicts. What do you do when you're having a conflict with your children? You, and I have this in on my website with tips for
Oh, good.
hopefully raising happy and successful children. You have to keep the lines of communication open, which is really, really tough because you want to be apprised of what they're going through and see things from their point of view, which is, I'd say, one of the hardest things because you have the tendency, not you, but one does in many cases, except a parent who's so self-involved, but you generally want to prevent something dire, if you can possibly help it, happening to your child. And it's not always easy. You can give your point of view and your advice and what you want them to do. You try to explain it, but I learned from a book that I read by two women psychologists, I believe, because I was so desperate at one time for one of my kids who was kind of difficult, let's say, in the teenage years. And they said you have to listen to their point of view and then try to respond to it. It's not easy.
Now, I got a little book here called by Gibran, The Prophet. He has a little commentary about, your kids are your kids, but basically, I guess you don't own them fully. And
There
that
you go.
you
Like
got,
my dad would have said, you're, and I have the father in the book saying this quote, your children are hostages to fortune. So true.
Mhm. Well, this is very important, your commentary. Is there another little, not big gem, I'll call these, that you'd like to share at this moment? And everybody should go out and get the name of the book is.
Adventures of Jelly Bean, the further adventures of Jelly Bean, and the still further adventures of Jelly Bean. And that should be coming out soon, my book three. But the first two, they're available through Amazon. That's the easiest way to get them. In my fourth book, I'm not great with titles. I'm still hunting around for a. Well, one of my grandchildren suggested the Chronicles of Jelly Bean for my fourth book, but that's a little ways off. I'm in medias race. I'm in the middle of writing it.
I was going to suggest the still. How many are we up to? Still.
And that sounds like something I would come up with, but I have to find something a little more compelling.
Oh, all
Trying.
righty. Well, all righty, all righty. And another thought that you'd like to share at this moment,
Oh,
about the book and what you put together here.
so let's see. I would have to say that what they also liked, these reviewers, about my book, which, as I said, happily surprised me, was that my husband's a big dog lover. I'm a little less so, but Jelly Bean, loves her dog and relies on it a lot for comfort because I guess this was kind of on the mark as well. Your parents are often busy and they're often too busy to give you a ton of attention. It's kind of rare in most cases because they have parents have other children and they have work and they have their own circumstances and ups and downs and illnesses and so forth. So I would say also my books give good perspectives on the different generations. Like Jelly Bean loves her dog for one thing, but her grandmother, and this happened in my life also. I don't know if I could put it into words back then. Your grandparents frequently, if not usually, have more time and attention for you. So, and often young kids seek that and they offer a good perspective, the grandparents, because they've been through it all, most of it. And they're good at listening. I know my mom was, and as a grandmother, she was a great listener, and that's so important. Kids really need to be listened to. And that's in my book as well. She gets very upset, Jelly Bean, when her grandmother has to move out of her room because I don't want to give away too much, but her grandmother gets remarried after the grandfather dies. And she learns how to deal with death, which is never easy for us adults or certainly not for kids. So
Wow,
there's that in
this
there.
is so, so powerful. I'm going to ask you one last question. I could really talk to you for a long time because being a grandparent and a loving grandparent, and I'm very lucky to have a loving family that
Hmm.
allows me to spend a lot of time with my own family and grandkids. So, um, we're involved with this International Day of Peace. Been doing this for over 20 years, working
Hmm.
towards strengthening the message of peace on Mother Earth and these kinds of things. So, I ask lots of people, what is peace for them? It's Pollack. What is peace for you? If you don't mind me asking that question, I know it's.
No, the hope is that I don't know. In the words of Rodney King, and I say this to my kids, can we just all get along? And it just seems to be, and again, I think a lot has to do with listening to one another and hopefully just trying to come together and understand one another. You could tell I'm sort of a latter day hippie a little bit. And because that was my coming of age, those were my years of coming of age. And it's just so important and it's so easy to lose sight of. I don't know why, well, all kinds of reasons why people become so argumentative. And, I guess it's a natural tendency. And at one point, for example, I think it's my further adventures of Jelly Bean, the grandma says to Jelly Bean, because Jillian is her real name, she's always fighting with one of her brothers, which happens a lot in families. And she says, you have to promise me, you two, you're going to work at getting along better. This is on a obviously one level, but it is so important. She said, you're going to need one another one day. And, Jelly Bean's like, she doesn't quite get it at the time because who does? But I think it does start I mean, how many families do you know where people aren't talking to one another? And not to go on and on and on, but that can happen so easily. And I think about something my grandmother said, which was, you don't have to hear everything. I think sometimes, and you can see it on a bigger level with countries and so forth. You're so tempted to say, not you, but one is so tempted to say, what's that supposed to mean? And you can stop yourself from saying that. Like often my mother, who had a lot of good advice as well, so did my dad. And they're kind of recreated in my books because I was my parents died young, but I was so blessed to have had them. And my mom would say, have someone wonder why you didn't say something rather than why you did. And I really try to keep that in mind because it's tough. And I kind of want to have the last word and all that business, and it's not worth it. It doesn't land so well on the other person.
You're fantastic. Okay. All
Thanks.
righty. Well, thank you. I'm allow you to have the last word. And only you're really special. You really have a lot of depth of knowledge, and as far as my perspective for you and
Thank you, Paul.
share, and I'm honored to get a few moments here to share. And I wish you continued success. And our broadcast is open for you whenever you feel you want to share some more good thoughts.
Oh,
Powerful.
well.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Take care.
Okay.